I always believed that being a good mother meant nothing could be out of place. Every morning, I woke up with a long list already running through my mind before I even had the chance to write it down. Our house often looked tidy whenever someone came to visit, yet somehow I almost never felt truly at peace inside it. I started feeling uneasy every time I looked at my phone and opened social media. The more I saw other mothers' lives, the more I noticed everything I thought I was missing. The hardest part was never the laundry, the cooking, or keeping the house in order. It was the feeling that everything had to look perfect every single day. My name is Clara. It took me a very long time to realize that the most expensive price of chasing perfection was never money. It was losing pieces of myself. Our mornings began like those of many small families. Armand got ready for work while Mira rubbed her sleepy eyes, still holding her favorite stuffed animal. While I cooked breakfast, I kept glancing at the clock. Even as the eggs sizzled, my thoughts had already moved to the laundry, the electric bill, and the grocery shopping I still hadn't finished. Before Mira left for school, I straightened the living room one more time. No one was coming over that day, yet I still felt the need to do it. I noticed a tiny stain on the dining table. Somehow, something that small made me stop everything else until the surface looked completely clean. When I opened a shopping app, I found myself looking at lunchboxes we didn't actually need. I simply felt Mira's lunch would look better in something prettier. That afternoon, I folded clothes while listening to Mira play by herself in the living room. Every time she called for me, I answered, "Just a minute, sweetheart. I'm almost done." By that night, the house was finally spotless. I looked around and took a long breath, yet what stayed with me wasn't relief, was a kind of tiredness I couldn't explain. A few weeks passed, and I started noticing the same pattern repeating itself. Every day felt completely full, yet somehow I still carried the quiet feeling that something was missing. After Mira fell asleep for her afternoon nap, I opened social media, hoping to find ideas for dinner. Instead, I found spotless homes, beautifully packed lunches, and mothers who never seemed tired. I closed the app a few minutes later. Even so, the images stayed quietly in my mind for the rest of the day. While shopping for our weekly groceries, I placed a few things into the cart that were never on my list. I told myself they were for my family, even though part of me knew they were also helping me feel like I was doing enough. I kept wondering why the housework never seemed to end. Every completed task quietly made room for another standard I had created for myself. I often told myself that every mother probably felt this way. So I kept moving, treating the tiredness as if it were simply part of being a mother. That night, after every light in the house had been turned off, I sat alone at the dining table. For the first time, I quietly wondered whether I was caring for my family or simply chasing an image of the perfect family. A few days later, Mira proudly showed me a drawing she had made at school. I smiled at it for a moment, but my mind was still occupied with dinner plans and the chores waiting for me. That evening, I noticed the drawing again on the table. Only then did I realize I had never truly looked at what Mira wanted to show me. The feeling of guilt settled in quietly. I had been so focused on being a good mother that I forgot to enjoy the little moments that mattered most. I started noticing that my to-do list never seemed to end. It wasn't because my family expected more, but because I kept raising the standard for myself without realizing it. The house looked tidier than ever. Somehow, though, laughter with Mira had become harder to hear. I slowly faced a truth that felt heavy to carry. All this effort made our home look beautiful, but it didn't always make me feel truly present inside it. That night, I stood quietly in front of the kitchen mirror for a long time. I saw a mother who seemed capable of handling everything, yet was slowly losing space for herself. Early that morning, Armand smiled as he noticed the dining table already neatly prepared. He quietly thanked me, saying the house always felt comforting when he came home. I smiled back with complete sincerity. Yet a quiet part of me wished someone would also ask how I was doing that day. After school, Mira ran straight over to hug me while excitedly talking about her new friend. I listened as I kept folding the growing pile of laundry on the sofa. Every so often, Mira paused because she noticed my eyes drifting back to the work that still needed to be done. I nodded and smiled even as my thoughts had already moved on to the next task. That evening, we shared dinner together just as we always did. We laughed and talked, and from the outside we looked like a happy family. After everyone had gone to sleep, I quietly walked through the house once again. I straightened the pillows, folded the blankets, cleaned the kitchen table, and made sure everything looked perfect for tomorrow morning. When I finally sat alone in the quiet living room, one thought stayed with me. The house had become more orderly, yet my heart felt more weighed down by a tiredness no one could see. The next afternoon, Mira invited me to build blocks with her in the living room. I glanced at the clock and gently said, "Just 5 minutes, sweetheart. I need to finish the kitchen first." 5 minutes quietly became 15. When I returned, Mira was building the little tower by herself while softly humming to herself. I sat beside her and apologized for making her wait. She answered with a small smile, as if waiting had quietly become something familiar. Then Mira gently held my hand and spoke in a quiet voice. "Mom, our house is already clean. Can you play with me now?" I stayed completely still for a few seconds. That simple sentence felt heavier than every household task I had finished that day. I looked around the room. The floor was clean, the table was organized, and the laundry was finished, but the time Mira wanted to share with me could never be saved for later. That night, after Mira had fallen asleep, I sat quietly beside her bed. For the first time, I cried not because I was tired, but because I was beginning to realize I had spent so much time trying to be a mother who looked perfect that I had almost forgotten to simply be present. The next morning, I didn't make the bed right away like I usually did. Instead, I sat quietly on the edge of it, thinking about what Mira had said the night before. "Our house is already clean." The more I thought about those words, the more I realized that no one had ever expected our home to be perfect. I slowly understood that I had created those expectations myself. They had grown little by little from the images I saw, other people's comments, and my fear of not being enough as a mother. I began remembering how many things I had bought that we didn't truly need. New lunch boxes, prettier storage containers, and small decorations had all been part of trying to make our home feel more ideal. What Mira usually wanted was much simpler. She only wanted me to sit beside her while she drew, listen to her stories, or read with her before bedtime. That was when I finally understood what I had really been chasing. It wasn't a happier family, but the picture of a perfect family that other people might see. The price I paid wasn't only money or energy. I had almost missed the small moments that one day could never be lived again. That night, after Mira had fallen asleep, I asked Armand to sit with me on the front porch. For the first time in a long while, I left the unfinished chores inside the house instead of bringing them with me. I quietly told him, "I'm tired, Armand, but it isn't the housework that's making me tired." The words came out more gently than I had expected. Armand looked at me for a long moment without saying anything. It felt as though he was giving me space to keep talking when I was ready. I told him how every day I felt I had to be a mother who was always ready, keep the house in order, and make sure our family always looked like everything was fine. Somewhere along the way, I couldn't remember the last time I had done something simply because I enjoyed it. Armand took a slow breath before answering. "I honestly didn't know you were carrying all of that by yourself. I thought you simply liked keeping everything in order." I shook my head with a small smile. At first, I did. But after a while, I started feeling like if I stopped even for a moment, I was failing as a mother. Armand reached over and held my hand. "If the house is a little messy, but you get to laugh with Mira more, I think that matters much more. We'll face everything together." The next morning, a few dishes were still sitting in the sink. For the first time, I left them there for a while and chose to sit beside Mira as we enjoyed breakfast together. Mira excitedly told me about a game she wanted to play after school. This time, I listened without glancing toward the kitchen or thinking about the next chore. While shopping for the week, I looked at the grocery list I had prepared. I quietly returned a few items to the shelf after realizing we did not need them. We simply did not want to appear as though we had less. That afternoon, Armand came home earlier than usual. Without saying much, he started folding the laundry while chatting with Mira as she drew on the floor. The house was not as tidy as it usually was that day. A few toys still rested in the corner, and some of the laundry had not been finished yet. Somehow, the house felt lighter than it had in a long time. Mira's laughter filled the room, and for the first time in a while, I laughed with her without feeling that I was neglecting something else. I slowly began to understand that a warm home is not one that always looks perfect. It is a place where everyone feels comfortable enough to simply be themselves. Today, I still remind myself of something almost every day. Being a good mom does not always mean doing more, but having the courage to let go of things that were never truly important. I am still learning what it means to be a good enough parent. Whenever I feel the need to appear perfect, I quietly ask myself whether it strengthens our relationship or only makes everything look more perfect. The answer is often much simpler than I expect. Mira never remembers the cleanest floor or the prettiest lunchbox. She remembers who sat beside her when she wanted to tell a story. If my story feels close to your own, maybe you do not have to carry everything by yourself either. If you would like to keep growing together toward a healthier family, both financially and emotionally, I would be happy to have you here by subscribing to Clara's Family Journal. Before I go, I would love to ask you one question. What idea of being the perfect mom did you finally decide to let go of this week? And would you share it in the comments in case your story encourages another mother too?